All right, good afternoon. It is now 3 o'clock p.m., and we're calling this Thursday, November the 30th, 2023 Board of Police Commissioners meeting to order. We will begin today's meeting with invocation, which will be offered to us by Chaplain Cassandra Ford. Chaplain Ford?
Shall we pray? Gracious God, we come right now. Before asking for anything, we want to say thank you. We want to say thank you for this day that we have never seen. And Lord, we come into this meeting asking you just to provide order, because we know that you are not the author of confusion, but of peace and of sound mind. We thank you today. We didn't only come here today just to be seen, Lord God, but we came for guidance and direction. We came to let you lead the way so we can follow. We thank you, oh God. We pray that everything that be said in this meeting, Lord God, will be of you. Now, Lord God, we lift up Chief White and every officer that serve on the city of Detroit. We lift up right now Chairman Presley, Lord God, and every member that's on this board. We thank you. We ask you to continue to lead and guide us and show us the way. For every complaint that is lifted, Lord God, we give it to you for more directions. We thank you. We give you the praise. In Jesus' name we pray. And everybody said amen.
Amen. Thank you so very much for such a powerful prayer. At this time, we'll have an introduction of our commissioners by Secretary Shaw.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
could I pause for special privilege?
Yes.
Transition of Dr. Charles Adams. I think we have a moment of silence. He was very historic in the city of Detroit. He was very supportive of public safety, and he was very supportive of African-American black police officers in this city. So we could pause to acknowledge his transition.
Well said. May we all pause for a moment of silence to honor the life, the legacy, and the memory of the Reverend Dr. Charles Gilchrist Adams. Amen.
Thank you.
And now, introduction of commissioners by Secretary Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chairman Quantes Presley,
Here.
Vice Chair Jim Holly,
Here.
Commissioner Tamara Liberty Smith,
Here.
Commissioner Linda Bernard,
Attorney Linda Bernard, District 2, present.
Commissioner Cedric Banks, Commissioner Willie Bell,
President, District 4.
Commissioner Willie Burton submitted an excused absence. Commissioner Lisa Carter also submitted an excused absence. Commissioner Ricardo Moore,
President.
Commissioner Jesus Hernandez submitted an excused absence, and Commissioner Roy Gamble is listening in on Zoom today, Mr. Chair.
Okay. With that, we do have a quorum. At this time, we'll move to the approval of the November 30th, 2023 agenda. Is there any objection to this agenda? Hearing no objection, that agenda is adopted. Next, we will move to the approval of the minutes for November 17th, 2023. Is there any objection to these minutes? Hearing no objection, the minutes will be adopted. Now we'll have introduction of BOPC staff, Chief of Police, elected official, representatives, and community leaders by Secretary Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For staff today, for the BLPC staff, we have Chief Investigator Jerome Warfield, Ms. Teresa Blossom, Ms. Jonya Underwood, Ms. Candace Hayes, and Ms. Jasmine Taylor supporting on Zoom. We also have present Acting Supervisor Investigator Elgin Murphy. Also present is the American Sign Language interpreters, Dr. Stephanie Beatty and Ms. Yakata. We have DPD HR Director Katrina Patillo. Don Handyside is our court reporter. Sai is providing video, and Sergeant Alan Quinn is providing audio. Sitting in for the chief today, we have Deputy Chief Franklin Hayes. For elected officials and representatives, we have Ms. Marie Overall from State Representative Tyrone Carter's office, Ms. LaDon Davis, City Council Member Fred Durhall III's office, former Commissioner William Davis, Ms. Fredia Butler, Community Relations President for 2nd Precinct, and Mr. Ron Thomas, DPOA Vice President.
Thank you so very much. Let the record show that Commissioner Banks has joined us. Commissioner Bernard.
Just quickly, I believe Peter Rhodes is present as well from Councilwoman Callaway's office.
Thank you. We're so grateful to have you here. Thank you, Commissioner Bernard, for that recognition. And to all who have joined today's meeting, whether in person or virtually, we're grateful for your attendance and hope that it might add to the productivity of today's meeting. With that, we will now move on to the BOPC's officers' report, where we have an opportunity to read into the record a resolution for a now retired Commander Kimberly M. Blackwell. But before we read that resolution, let me remind the public that if you're here in the room, you can fill out a public comment card and to provide it to Ms. Jonia Underwood if you would like to speak. And then those online can make yourselves can identify yourselves if you also would like to speak. And again, that will take place directly after the Chief of Police report. With that, Commissioner Moore, the resolution for retired Commander Kimberly M. Blackwell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Resolution honoring Commander Kimberly M. Blackwell. Whereas Kimberly Blackwell was appointed to the Detroit Police Department on June 12, 1995. Upon graduating from the Detroit Metropolitan Police Academy, Officer Blackwell began her career at the 8th Precinct Patrol Operations Services Section. And whereas Officer Blackwell demonstrated leadership and a commitment to the department's mission and her assignments at the 8th Precinct, Police Recruiting, Executive Protection, Office of the Assistant Chief of Operations, 12th Precinct, Internal Controls, and the Police Academy. On December 21, 2010, she earned promotion to the rank of Sergeant at Internal Controls. Her other assignments include the Criminal Investigative Unit, Detective Bureau, Support Services Bureau, Patrol Operations Bureau, and City Council Security. Sergeant Blackwell was promoted to lieutenant on April 8, 2019, and assigned to the Chief's Neighborhood Liaison. On February 8, 2021, Lieutenant Blackwell was promoted to captain and reassigned to Chief's Neighborhood Liaison and the Special Victims Unit. And whereas Captain Blackwell continued to display tremendous knowledge, skills, and inspirational leadership, on July 25, 2022, she was appointed to commander and assigned to the 10th Precinct. Commander Blackwell was assigned as the commanding officer of major crimes, where she served until her retirement. And whereas Commander Blackwell was the deserving recipient of numerous other honors and commendations, her awards include the Ford Fireworks Award, the Major League Baseball All-Star Recognition Award, the Rosa Parks Funeral Recognition Award, both Consent Judgment Awards, and the Super Bowl 40 Recognition Award. And whereas numerous letters of commendation from residents and superiors, and whereas she has dedicated herself to the role of a leader that leads by example with a strong work ethic in serving the Detroit Police Department, the people of Detroit, and our neighboring communities for 28 years. With her loyalty, integrity, and dedication to public service, Commander Blackwell is widely respected throughout law enforcement and the Detroit community as the consummate professional. Therefore, be it resolved that the Detroit Board of Police Commissioners, speaking on behalf of the citizens of the great city of Detroit, recognizes and honors the lifelong contributions and commitment to excellence in public service of Commander Kimberly M. Blackwell. Her display of courage and unwavering community spirit has improved the quality of life for the citizens of Detroit. We wish you all the best in your future endeavors. Move for adoption, Mr. Chairman.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been properly moved and second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and that resolution is adopted into our archives. Once again, congratulations, retired Commander Kimberly Blackwell, for amazing years of service to our Detroit Police Department. With that, in the Board of Police Commissioners report, I want to just share with my colleagues that I do recognize that with the onboarding of 2 new commissioners and soon to be 3, and with the leaving of Vice Chair Holly at the end of the year, there is some business that we will have to tend to. And so it is my intention that we will reorganize committees as well as have an election for Vice Chair in our first meeting of 2024. Okay, I think that it's appropriate to seat our newest commissioner who comes on board at the beginning of the year so that he might have a voice in who the leadership of this board might be. And so I did want to share that because I know that there has been some inquiries regarding the vice chairperson's election as well as committee assignments. Any questions or comments for the Board of Police Commissioners Officers Report? Hearing none, we will now move to our Community Impact Report where Secretary Shaw and Ms. Blossom will provide us further information. Secretary Shaw.
Through the chair, some very exciting news reached the board's office this morning that we believe will have a positive impact on the community in the development of the next generation of oversight practitioners. I'd like to read a memo from Ms. Teresa Blossom, which is in the front pocket of your packets. This is dated November 30th, 2023. The Skillman Foundation shared today that it is awarding $15,700 to support the Youth Advisory Panel based on our grant request for funding. This is great news as YAP completes its first year and now is building capacity and sustainability. After starting with 5 members last fall, YAP now has 16 members for the next year. In 2024, based on the grant request, the Skillman Award will help to support stipends and refreshments for the 16 youth to participate in YAP meetings, transportation assistance to attend YAP and BOPC meetings and certain DPD youth events, community capacity building activities by the program, including civilian oversight of law enforcement training for youth and YAP-led seminar workshops. The board staff continues to rely on the Detroit Public Safety Foundation to serve as our fiduciary for receiving and managing grants and donations. We'll work with the Skillman Foundation, Detroit Public Safety Foundation staff, and BOPC Fiscal Executive Manager on the budget implementation and compliance for this grant. Since YAP got underway in May of 2022, a lot of work has been done by many people, Board of Police Commissioners, the first 5 YAP members, and Wayne State partners, helping to shape the grant proposal, target submission opportunities, and ensure this outcome. We are grateful for and acknowledge the impact of letters of support for YAP from Detroit Public Schools Community District Superintendent Nikolai Vitti and Police Chief James White. Please note that we continue to seek support to ensure YAP's effectiveness during this pivotal period of growth and youth engagement. The projected total budget needed based on market costs and expected full participation of all youth is $26,995.50. While the Skillman Grant will make a phenomenal difference, especially given the notable achievements with no funds, we continue to pursue opportunities that will support the goals set in the board's 2022 resolution and implementation of YAP decisions. Mr. Chair, if you would like Ms. Blossom to have further comments and/or respond to any questions, she is prepared to do so as well.
Are there any further questions or comments for Ms. Blossom? Ms.
Right.
Blossom, is there anything that you would like to add?
Through the chair, I just want to say again, kudos to the leadership provided by the board, in particular, former police commissioner and vice chair, and Annie Holt, and to District 6 Commissioner Lisa Carter for really pushing the idea of a youth advisory panel to formalize the board's ongoing youth engagement. And I do want to just echo the thanks to Chief White and his team for providing that letter that got us over the hump, because we had been out in the market all year. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Banks.
Yes, through the chair, thank you. What does YAP stand for? What,
The Youth Advisory Panel.
okay, thank you.
You're so welcome.
Through the chair,
Yes.
if I may add one more piece.
May?
I just want to especially acknowledge Ms. Teresa Blossom in this effort. She has been working for quite a long time, and there have been multiple obstacles which she probably will downplay in order to get this grant through. So just thanks to her for her tireless work. Her excitement was explosive in the office today when this came through, and we all were very excited along with her.
Yeah, we talking about 15 stacks. Yeah, everybody's supposed to be excited, as young people would say. But of course, with her extreme humility, we know that she pushes away the credit and honor she deserves. But we're grateful for her diligence and persistence in this matter, and are so looking forward to the increased impact of the Youth Advisory Panel as a result. And so for those who might be listening, as you can hear, we still are about what's that math? $11,000 shy of the budget goal that we need. And so, if anyone knows of any others who might support the youth advisory panel, we encourage you to reach out to our office. With that, is there any further report under the community impact report?
No, Mr. Chair.
All right, hearing none, we will now move to our chief of police report, and we're so grateful to be joined by Chief James White. Chief
Good
White.
afternoon. Good afternoon. Thank you. Through the chair, I'll start with our crime report. Our homicides are down 18% from 278 to a low of 227 year to date. Our non-fatal shootings are down 13%, 872 in 2022 to 757 in 2023. Our robberies are down 2%, 1,290 in 22, 1,269 in 23. 1% reduction in Part 1 total violent crime, and a 36% reduction in carjacking. Also, we look at our criminal sexual conduct numbers. It's an area that we were extremely focused on, making sure that victims are given the opportunity to report the crime, and as such, sometimes you see those numbers increase, which we saw last year for a period of time. Those numbers have stabilized, and we're looking at a 6.6% reduction in sexual assaults, about a 1% reduction in aggravated assaults. So the crime is moving in the right direction, certainly not celebrating when you have the type of numbers that we have in the city and a number of victims in our city. There's really not a celebration to go from 278 to 227, but what we do know is that our plans are working, our deployment is working, our strategies are working, and we're going to continue to try to drive those numbers down even lower next year this time. Still have to get through December, which historically is a very violent month for the city of Detroit. On average, there's about 30 murders in the month of December. Some are domestic violence related, and there's a number of suicides in December with the holiday season. So again, not celebrating, but certainly very happy with the numbers and very happy with the work that the men and women of the Detroit Police Department are doing. Moving on to the ShotSpotter report that was asked for last meeting, or 2 meetings ago.
And Commissioner Gamble is joining us online.
And Commissioner Gamble asked about adding those numbers, which we went back and did that back to April. I'll just report out for the month. We'll be asking the board to consider the firearm numbers a monthly report, but we will still provide the weekly report on ShotSpotter incidents. Tracking the data for the weapons is a bit of a task to add them in and attribute them to each ShotSpotter incident. So we think we can provide the most accurate numbers if that report is 30 days, but the weekly report on the actual incidents will remain the same. Looking at the ShotSpotter arrests from October 30th to November 5th, it was 4 arrests, 7 firearms. November 6th to November 12th, 7 arrests, 8 firearms. November 13th to November 19th, 5 arrests, 7 firearms. And then November 20th to November 26th, 4 arrests and 7 firearms. So that concludes that report. I'm not going to go into the individualized incidents this week. I'd like to take some time to respond to a couple of things. First and foremost, today I reviewed a Detroit Free Press article authored by Commissioner Ricardo Moore, and it would be remiss if I did not take a moment to respond to that. First and foremost, Commissioner Moore, my heartfelt condolences to you and your family for the death of your grandfather in 1984. This is my first time being made aware of that incident. And as you're fully aware, I was not the chief in 1984. I became chief in 2021, so I'll address the allegations made of me under my watch. When this honorable board approved me as chief, I committed to be fully transparent to this board, and I continue to work to that end. I sit here week in and week out and provide this board with information, very complex information. Those of us in law enforcement understand and know that there are things that I simply cannot disclose, period. And if we hide that under the cloak of transparency, I think that we miss an opportunity to understand. Oftentimes, when I speak to this board, I want agreement, but the goal isn't agreement. The goal is understanding. And I understand that the board has a duty that they must adhere to, and they have a responsibility. But there are things that I'm not going to do and not going to say that's going to compromise the integrity of an investigation. There are people that are listening to every word that comes out of my mouth. I know that because I get FOIA quite a bit about the things that I say to confirm the things that I've said. And the FOIA rules are there for a reason. There's certain things that I can get into. There's certain things I won't. When we talk about criminal investigations and the complexities of a criminal investigation, particularly a homicide, there could be the suspect listening. And if I forecast the moves of the police department, that's a problem for making an arrest of the suspect. But there's a bigger problem. We are one piece of the investigatory process in prosecuting a homicide. We provide a warrant to the prosecutor's office who has to review it, make a determination, and make an arrest. That's a multi-layered approach. Oftentimes, what the board does not know is that warrants are being worked on. There's information and people we are looking for to submit information into that warrant. And it's a fluid process. There are times when I know information that we're looking for somebody to ask them something about something to add to a warrant to submit to the prosecutor's office. If we act haphazardly, we act without detail, we could completely damage a case. You get one bite at the apple. You don't get to bring people in, charge them with murder, and then do a shoddy investigation and have them released, and then they get charged again for the same crime. It just doesn't work like that. Double jeopardy is a problem. So we want to make sure that we diligently work towards providing all the information and do a quality investigation for submission to the prosecutor's office so that she can make a charging decision on the cases that we bring forward. There's an issue, the second issue that I identified in this article was this issue of transparency for me in other areas of the department. It's simply not true. Again, I work towards trying to be transparent in areas in this department, changing policy, and making sure that we are on the forefront of best practices. I engage in best practice studying. I talk to my colleagues around the country. One such meeting happened recently when I was at the IACP, and I learned of a model that LAPD uses for releasing officer-involved incidents involving critical uses of force as well as officer-involved shootings.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Chief. Can you explain what
I'm sorry, the International Association of Chiefs of Police.
Thank you.
Major city chiefs from around the country meet and to discuss best practices. I participated in that, and we've been looking to move towards the release of a model that would show officer-involved shootings and critical uses of force, not just officer-involved shootings, but also officer-involved shootings. We looked at a model in LA. We liked that model. It provided as much information that you could at the time. Certainly, you made it very clear in that in this particular model that because of the nature of these cases, that some of the information is subject to change. So what we want to do, and what you've noticed we do in critical incidents, and particularly officer-involved shootings, is we rush to put information out. We do. We put information out. We go right to the scene. We talk right to the community about these incidents. Don't see a lot of agencies doing that. Detroit does it. We go out. We're standing there. It's important. I can put out a statement. No, we're standing there at the scene. We're telling the community this is what happened. We put it on our social media. This is what happened. And we then say, and we always say it as boilerplate language, this is preliminary information subject to change. And most times it does. We download all our video assets, not just body camera, but video assets in and around the community that are germane to the investigation. We talk to witnesses, and sometimes things change. If there's a charging decision against the officer, or I make a disciplinary decision, and I can. And I have the authority to do that, and sometimes I do that. And it's not always tie-barred to whether or not the officer has been engaged in necessarily an excessive use of force or an improper use of force. But there's a procedural evaluation that I look at. Okay, so there have been cases where the officer made the appropriate decision to administer fatal force. absolutely. In the instance, in one case in particular that has come up, the officer used the appropriate level of force with the threat that he or she was met with. The problem is all of the facts and circumstances that led to us being in that circumstance in the first place. That's where the violation occurred. And that's when I submitted to this board a suspension without pay that was candidly refused based on the inconsistency of the chief. So you've got the chief now who is trying to hold an officer accountable, and the board saying, at least not publicly, that this is improper. But then, of course, publicly, we speak to this lack of transparency and these issues involving releasing of information. So as a result, I've repeatedly asked this honorable board to follow the law department's legal opinion, mandating that the board act according to the City of Detroit Charter, Article 7, specifically Chapter 8, by citing the relevant portion of the charter which you may be seeking the information under. Some of the information that's been asked for, we know, has been talked about ad nauseum, that one incident in particular, officer's information was compromised, put on someone's social media platform. And it's had to do with the officer, again, an alleged inconsistency of two documents, where one document internally did not speak in specifics as to why this particular officer was being suspended, which is it's by design, because that first document is an internal document that goes to payroll. It goes throughout the department to make a payment decision for the officer and a status, whether he would be or she would be suspended with or without pay. If with pay, before this board could act, then they would be in an administrative capacity. Without pay, it would be with benefits. And then the board gets the more granular, detailed information, which again changes from the initial incident as to why I want to suspend without pay. The two documents were posted side by side on social media as evidence to my inconsistency. Now, what I find ironic is I authored both documents. So if I signed and authored both documents, one would imagine I would pick up on the fact that there's a bit of a difference in the two documents. So again, I offer to this board that that was by design, because one is internal and one is for this board and subject to all the rules of FOIA and other things such as that. So that is where I'm at. I continue to want to work professionally with this board. This is not about scorn or ridicule. I took an oath of office, and I am very committed to doing my job in the face of danger, scorn, and ridicule. It's actually part of the officer's code of conduct. But what I am looking for is this board to continue to engage in a professional oversight of this police department, as I intend to do. And that we not go back to a very dark time in this city's history where council members were fighting amongst each other. And certainly that is just something that I will not participate in. I enjoy having a measured approach and a professional attitude. And I think it really does a disservice to the community. It does a disservice to this police department. When you're looking at a major city reporting numbers such as this, you've got officers working very hard. Lastly, I will say this. There are two cases that continually come up, two homicides, and we want to solve them. We really do. We're working very hard. Got the best homicide group in the country that are working day in and day out to close these cases. But I spoke to this board earlier in this presentation and told you that we have 227 homicides. We've got a 52% closure rate, so that tells us about 112 have closed, maybe 111, and we've got another 100 plus families that we have to deal with. We're going to put the same energy and effort in the other 111 as we have in the ones that have closed. Not going to treat any two cases any different than any others. And I don't have any information that I can provide any different than I have. And when I have more information on those two cases that come up, I will be prepared to present them as I have in the past. But that will not be today. Thank you.
Thank you. And it is expected that with the characterization that has been presented in the article that you're referring to, that you would speak, and I appreciate the tone and the demeanor in which you have done so. And I ask that my colleagues would do the same. I think that there is a way for us to disagree with dignity and to ensure that our voices are heard on behalf of the citizens of the city of Detroit without us losing our composure. And so with that, I ask you to keep that in mind as I opened up the floor for questions or comments for the chief from any of the commissioners.
Right there, Mr. Chair. Through the chair.
Mr. Banks.
Chief, blessings to you and your household. What I wanted to ask you was, what type of information do you have to present to the prosecutor's office to get a warrant? You've been talking about warrants today, to get a warrant on an individual. What type of information do you produce to the prosecutor's office to get that warrant?
Through the chair, depends on the nature of the case, but they're very complex cases. All cases are different. Each case is
Can you
individual.
give me a little general, though?
If you want to talk about a homicide case, if a person is suspected as the person who killed the person, the victim that you're investigating, they have to have the ability to do so, the opportunity to do so, and any witnesses, any evidence, biological evidence, DNA evidence. When you talk about ability, were they at work? You have to prove that they weren't at work. You have to talk to coworkers to ensure that they didn't leave work, or if they did leave work, that they leave work in the time frame in which the crime was committed. You have to have a morgue report. You have to pull down information from the morgue report about the time of death, rigor mortis, and things such as that. I mean, it's so complex to give you, anything other than a Reader's Digest version of what we have to do would be very complex. But each case is extraordinarily complex. And oftentimes we find ourselves in situations investigating pieces of information that are revealed upon a inquiry. So I bring someone in who we think is good for the case, right? But in doing so, we find out they're not good for the case, but they know who is. And so now we have to start all over again.
Through the chair, I'm all set.
Thank you, Commissioner Banks.
Chairman.
Commissioner Commissioner Moore.
Thank you, sir. First of all, Chief, thank you for the condolences to my family. I stand by that article, every word by it. I'm sure you disagree. I stand by every word. But I want to get into specifics about two of those stories that were mentioned. Samantha Wool. No, I'm sorry, Dr.
Can you
Hoover.
pull your mic a little closer to you?
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Dr. Hoover, you had mentioned something about snowfall. What did that have to do with the homicide?
Through the chair, can you be more specific?
You mentioned something about snowfall, something about the case being solved before snowfall.
Yeah, so if we're going to characterize what I said, we got to use the complete characterization.
Or what did you say?
Well, I'm going to tell you.
Speak.
Okay. Well, I don't.
The chair, both, through the chair.
Okay, so first of all, you're not going to tell me to speak. I choose to speak. And now I choose not to speak about what he's asking me because he works in the prosecutor's office. Why don't you tell me what I meant by
I have no idea.
snowfall?
What that-
Okay.
And my role in the prosecutor's office is not investigations. I don't
Well,
do-
but your role in prosecutor's office
the-
All right,
provides
Chief.
an
Prosecutor's-
And
investigation.
Commissioner Moore, I'm asking that you speak through the chair so that we can avoid what might appear to be contention.
It's no contention on my part through the chair, but for the benefit of the audience, because what I don't want to do is hold back information from them as we continue to mischaracterize information for the purpose of our own benefit. What Commissioner Moore is speaking to is early on in this investigation, probably around the summertime, I was asked, when will the investigation close? Do I think we're going to close the investigation? Well, I don't have a crystal ball, but I know the work that's being done by the people that do this work. And so the characterization that I made was, hopefully by snowfall. I may not have said hopefully. I'm sure it'll be checked, but I said should be by snowfall. Well, this is Michigan. That could be June in some cases. But in any event, probably an artful statement on my part. Snow has fallen, and that's why we're here today having this conversation, and the arrest has not been made. Obviously, in hindsight, could have used a better choice of words. What I meant was, hopefully by winter, it'll be done. Did not say that. So Commissioner Moore is correct. I did use the terminology by the snowfall, and it has absolutely nothing to do, to his point, with the closure of the case. But looking at the timeline that was in my mind and standing outside during the summer, I felt that we should be able to resolve the case by that time. Realistically, things have come up that have compromised that, but we're still on track investigating this case. We're still confident that we're going to get where we need to get.
Thank you.
And just one quick follow-up, Mr. Chairman. The Samantha Wool case, you had mentioned that it was not anti-Semitic. Is that still the case at this point?
I am confident in that. But again, when I stated that, my words were, at this time, there is nothing that suggests that this is a hate crime. And I stand behind that. Nothing has come forward, no part of the investigation has come forward to suggest that this is a hate crime. But as the retired law enforcement commissioner knows, in complex investigations, things change. At this time, nothing has changed to suggest that this is a hate crime. If it does change, there's no benefit to me saying that it is not a hate crime if it is. The evidence that we have suggests that this is not in any way a hate crime. And I stand by that. I stand with that. But if it changes, I will alert this board.
And one final question, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Moore?
Squatters Task Force, is that still in existence?
It is. Through the chair, it is not technically the Squatters Task Force, but yes, we do have a task force that aids both those who are shelterless and also aids those who are property owners and have people living in their homes, in their property. But it is a more or less dedicated to all of those people who are shelterless. But we do have a task force that focuses on folks who are working to find shelter. Yes.
Thank you. Any further questions? Commissioner Bell?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just cannot be silenced in reference to this dialogue.
Microphone.
I cannot be silenced in reference to this dialogue as a retired police officer and the similar commissioner. Basically, the homicide is the most critical job you can work in Detroit Police Department, in my opinion. I just want to commend these men and women that work in that area because we all have been victim of your family members or church members. Overall, I think a person has not been touched in reference to homicide. And it's a difficult task. When I try to interact with families to explain how it works, unlike TV, we don't solve it within 35 minutes. And unlike other issues, we don't go out and keep everybody happy. It don't work that way. There was a case on the east side of Detroit where a young lady was killed from Grosse Pointe. They offered a $100,000 reward. Nothing has materialized in reference to her death. So you go to show you, it's 10 years process. The chief has been very open, more so than probably any other chief in my history. Chief Hart would very do interviews. He would have a spokesman. And basically, I've been working with this chief of police for my 10th year. I think he's been very open. He's been very transparent with this board, and we should be patient to have some type of respect for the office. I just want to say the men and women on DPD is doing an excellent, outstanding job, and we commend them with the issues that we have. I was just in Memphis, Tennessee this weekend, and they have issues in Memphis, Tennessee in reference to homicide and issue, and we have a great police chief there. To me, it's a difficult task. I just want to close on that note. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Commissioner Bernard?
Chief, I'd simply like to, I just today got back from Washington, D.C. This is the Washington Post. And on the front page of the Washington Post, it says that there is a 40% increase in violent crimes and a 25% increase in property crimes in the District of Columbia. And so there's all kinds of hearings and everything there about that. So I want to congratulate you, even more than that, the officers on the police force, and above all of that, our community, for standing down with respect to initiating criminal activity. Because you are in a reactionary position, but the community is the one that really is responding to this issue and, if you will, making peace, continuing the peace in our community, where our statistics are the exact opposite of Washington, D.C.'s. So I want to congratulate the force for all of that, and as I said, our community. Secondly, you mentioned your participation in the Chiefs convention. Many of us participated in the NACO meeting in Chicago for civilian oversight boards. And one of the most dynamic speakers there was the chief of police, who formerly was the chief of police in Ferguson, where Mr. Brown, of course, was killed by the police. And what was interesting about it, Chief, in contrast to our force, is the fact that the internal affairs there is governed by civilians. People like the persons in this audience right now, they're the ones who decide whether or not the officer should be, I'll say, sanctioned for their behavior. A totally different paradigm from what we have. Not only that, in the chief's office, everyone is a civilian. Everybody in there is not a police chief that has been promoted up. I'm not talking about deputy chiefs and so forth, but everybody else. And as a result, they have a whole different sort of window through which they look at crime, because it's evaluated and the officers' performances are evaluated by civilians within the department. I'd like you to comment on that. And then finally, my committee, the policy committee, as you know, has taken up the issue of allowing the community to see videos of all officer-involved shootings, et cetera. And we've decided, not on the Los Angeles model, but on the Chicago model. It's a closer city, if you will, blacker city, a city that's our sister. We're sister communities. And Cleveland, the three of us, actually. So we're going to report back on that. But I'd like you to respond to the most attended section there was by this particular police chief. Very strong man. I'm sure you know him.
Well, through the chair, that's a fascinating process. I don't know a lot about it. Is that Ferguson, you said?
Yeah, he was the chief of Ferguson. Now he's in a new city.
Let me take a look at it.
Incidentally, the person who was the I'm calling it the evaluator, it's not. The person appointed by the Justice Department to look into Ferguson and so forth also spoke on this issue. She was there. The overseer, not the overseer, it's a name, but
Maybe we can have Secretary Shaw to provide the panel for that, so that the chief might have the names of the individuals that Commissioner Bernard is referring
yeah,
to.
but anyway, what do you
But to
think?
the question around Chicago versus LA in the release of videos, and then civilians having some input in disciplinary actions, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, the CBA, certainly limits us in some of the things that we could do. I would like to review the model so I can have an intellectual conversation about it. I don't know anything about that. On the surface, it's certainly fascinating. I mean, we do have a very similar model in the OCI, you would think. I mean, we've got a civilian oversight body, and we've got a group of folks who do the non-criminal investigations. There's some bifurcation there that one could argue is no longer needed. They could do them all. We do have some investigations that happen at the command level that we could question if that's still necessary in 2023. Maybe they should all go through OCI. I don't know, but it's worth entertaining. But I'd like to spend some time reviewing exactly what their process looks like so I can have an intellectual response for this body.
And how about Chicago versus LA's release of video policy?
Yeah, I looked at Chicago's model, and they basically I didn't see what you're referring to. We may be referring to the same thing. I just want to be careful. I found that LA best provided what we were looking for. We wanted to provide, and ours is going to be released as soon as possible, but no longer than 45 days is what our policy will be. And the reason for that is, well, it's a variety of reasons. There's a lot of circumstances where the video could be delayed. The feds could be looking at it. It could be a number of different things. If in our model, as you know, our officer-involved shootings in particular are handled by the Homicide Task Force. On that task force includes the Michigan State Police. So those investigations involving Detroit are led by the Michigan State Police, and that's by design. So we're not investigating ourselves completely, and that could possibly look like not a fair investigation, right? So we're trying to eliminate that. There could be some things in that investigation that are held back in terms of until the investigation is complete with the body camera. So we said we can do this in 45 days, as soon as possible, but at least 45 days. And that, like I said, that's the one that works for us. LA, the other thing I liked about LA, candidly, is the chief of police, or the designee that did the video before the release, talked about policy, which I did in ours. We have a reference to the Board of Police Commissioners in ours, what the powers of the board is, what the powers of the police department is in these instances, and then we bundled it together, put some context with it, my allergy, excuse me, and we released the 911 calls with ours. So that's the model we went with. It's going to be online now, I think today. And we've set up a YouTube page specifically for those incidents.
Well, that is very encouraging to hear. I'm sure that there will be some cautious and careful eyes to ensure that it meets the community's expectation. And as the policy committee is also reviewing their own policy, it'll be interesting to see how it aligns and what changes might need to be made so that we're on the same page relative to the policy of release of officer-involved shooting videos. Is there any other questions for the chief?
Chair,
Yes.
if I may,
Yes,
I do want to respond to one thing Commissioner Bernard said about the community, and I would be remiss if I didn't take a moment to, again, thank the officer.
Sorry, didn't understand what you said.
He's responding to what you said about the community.
Yeah, I was just saying I would be remiss if I didn't. She's absolutely correct. We must acknowledge our community being really sick and tired of this violence and partnering with us and bringing forward a lot of these crimes in the community. We could not be where we're at without our community. So thank you for bringing that up.
So Vice Chair Holly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I wanted to just ask you, if we come here every day, every week of oversight, so we also have each commissioner can basically do interviews and do press releases and things to the press individually, even though we sit around this table and do oversight every week. So I'm asking you, because I'm concerned, and this is no respect to any commissioner or any, that somehow down some policy ought to be made that commissioners cannot just basically do things on their own. You can't. In other words, why are we here? If I got to look at what the commissioner wants to talk about the police in the paper, I'm very concerned about that, and I know my time is out, but I'm just saying to you again, as someone that's been around here 100 years, I'm just saying to you that somehow, some kind of way, there ought to be some stipulation in terms of what we're able to do as commissioners, speaking from the board. This board is one board, not individually. We may have our differences about our policies, our differences about the police department, but I do feel like I'm very uncomfortable of finding a release in the paper about the work that we basically should be doing around the table. Does that make sense to you?
Your concern is well noted, and we were trying to explore if there is standing policy in that regard. There is a difference of philosophy between commissioners about whether or not we operate as a body or one's autonomy to operate as individual commissioners. But again, hearing your point, I think that it's far past time that we at least come to an agreement so that we move forward with an understanding on how we are expected to carry ourselves as commissioners and as this board. Commissioner Bernard.
Mr. Chairman, I obviously have great respect and regard for my colleague, but Jim, you cannot stop free speech. I'm an elected commissioner. I represent the largest district in the city of Detroit, just like city council. I'm entitled to my opinion, and other elected commissioners on this board are as well. The board, the commission votes through resolution, but individual commissioners, individual city council people are entitled to their opinion and entitled to exercise their right of free speech. It can't be controlled, and it won't be controlled because it would be unconstitutional.
Well, there are
not
factors and
employees.
circumstances, Commissioner Bernard, in which our speech is restricted. Case in point, when we have a closed session, no matter how individual you are, you cannot speak freely about what has been mentioned in closed session. So there may be,
that's a rule.
let me finish, there may, that's what I'm saying. So there may be policies that we can put in place, not to stop a commissioner from speaking their mind, but to ensure that we aren't left in the dark about what has been spoken about, because often there can be confusion on the community's part on whether or not this is an individual speaking or the board speaking, and I think that demarcation is necessary so that there isn't any confusion. So to the discussion that the board can have, both options can be held together if that indeed is the desire of the board, but to just say because of free speech we shouldn't try to put some policies or procedures in place that might mitigate confusion, I think
Mr. Rhodes is in the room. He's chief counsel to Callaway and also is our chief of staff. It's the same situation exists with city council. There are 11 commissioners. Each of them have different points of view. Each of them speak to the press independently about issues that they find important. That is our model, quite frankly. So,
And from your, so I try my best to communicate that there are differing philosophies on this board about how we should move forward. And so what I'm saying is I think that it's worth the conversation so we're not operating off assumptions, but that there is something that places a standard of expectation on how we should move forward. And so again, if it is to suggest that our policy is to mirror city council, then that will be our policy. But I think it's important to have a policy in place so that there isn't confusion about how we move forward. Chief, I just had a final question. No other colleagues had any questions. And this may be something you get back to as you you shared that the department has about a 52% closure rate on homicide cases or cases in general.
Homicide cases.
Homicide cases. And so I just want to know, like, where does that fit in, like, other major cities? Is that like a median? Is that at the top range, the bottom range? And so just to get a sense, when I hear that number, I need to know, like, are we doing well at 52%? Or is there, I mean, obviously there's room for improvement there, but where does it situate itself in relationship to other likewise municipalities?
Yeah, in my 28 years, it's one of the highest for us. I mean, we had a year of 8% in the city of Detroit.
Wow.
This was, when things were really, really bad. But I'll give you some context in that number and look at what the national average is. I just don't have it off the top of my head.
Okay.
But I know that if we're not close, we may be slightly above it, but I'll have to take a look.
Okay, thank you. And to my colleagues, is there any objection to the gun recovery data being submitted on a monthly basis as the chief has requested? Okay, hearing none, we will accept that recommendation.
Thank you.
All right, if no other further questions for the
Yeah,
chief?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, Commissioner Banks.
Not for the chief, though.
Yes.
For you. Now, I heard you, I heard you mentioning that, first of all, the Board of Police Commissioners, their oversight of the Detroit Police Department, so they have a voice. So you're trying to limit it to certain restrictions or what they can't, what
When you say
policy?
board of police commissioners, are you
Right.
talking about you or are you talking about the board?
I'm talking about the board.
Okay, so that's what the clarification was, because I think that there's confusion on whether or not when we say the Board of Police Commissioners, does that mean just a commissioner, or does that have to be the consensus of the board? So that's what I'm
Because a commissioner has a free right to speak to the media.
correct as a citizen.
Right.
Yes.
Because media is going to come after a commissioner. So what are you trying to do? Limit to what they're saying? Explain to me.
I'm trying to be clear so that when a commissioner speaks, there is clarity on whether or not that is a commissioner speaking individually or a commissioner speaking on behalf of the board.
Oh, you mean, okay. Now, you're talking about one commissioner speaking for the whole board.
Correct.
Okay, I see what you, okay, I got it now. Okay.
All right, thank you. Is there any further questions, comments?
It should be done through you.
Yeah, and
if it's for the whole board, but if
again, I
it's,
think that it's probably premature to try to have the conversation now. Let's set a space that we can dig into it deeply, and again, to ensure that we come up with a policy that makes sense for our work and what the community is asking for us to do. At this time, we now move to oral communications. Ms. Underwood, who do we have?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. We have 14 speakers today.
Wow. Wow.
Our first speaker will be Minister Eric Blunt. Our second speaker is Ms. Tabitha, and please forgive my pronunciation, Nahabandin.
Good afternoon, Board.
Good afternoon.
Gonna have 4 minutes again today?
Unfortunately, you cannot.
Had to ask. Had to ask. Just recognize it took a brand new commissioner to recognize that critical data was missing from the Shot Spotter report. I don't think anybody else was really looking at it or really cared to look at it. But the number of guns recovered is critical to measuring the success of this program. But it's not about success. It's about whatever the police department wants. And surveillance is what they want. Surveillance is what they get, no questions asked. On the issue of the quality and transparency of what happens, so many times in this police department, they're lacking. Where was the quality when a woman, a black woman, 8 months pregnant, was falsely arrested using facial recognition technology, detained so long she almost lost her unborn child? So don't brag about transparency and quality, and especially on the best practices. Where was that in Porter Burks? Took over a year to have any release of the body-worn camera footage of a man being shot 38 times by the police department. And yet what is released and on the BOPC website completely blocks out Porter Burks, so we don't know if it's him or not, or what he was doing or not, or what he had in his hand or not. No, that's still another cover-up. And no one on this board should be relying on the law department's legal opinion. They are not an independent council. They are part of the city, not part of an independent board we like to call the Board of Police Commissioners. So when it comes to video releases, the day of, all interaction with citizens, not a 45-day delay.
Correct.
The facts are the facts. We don't need to watch.
Thank you.
Miss Tabitha Nahabendon.
Ms. Tabitha? May have stepped out. We can go to our next.
Mr.
Public
Peter Rhodes. And after Mr. Peter Rhodes, it'll be Miss Smith.
My name is Peter Rhodes. I'm with the office of
Microphone.
Detroit City Council member Angela Whitfield Callaway, District 2. I'm just here to observe the Board of Police Commissioners meeting. I'm very interested in new business, item B, 2, and 3 concerning video release policy. And depending on the actions of the board today, we'll be looking forward to going forward in January of 2024 concerning any policy that may need a city ordinance. Also, I'd like to point out that there's a issue concerning murdered and missing black women and girls. It's a city problem, a state problem, it's a national problem. There is national legislation now before the United States Congress concerning this issue, and I just wanted to make the Board of Police Commissioners and the public aware of this pending legislation and ask for your support. Thank you very much. I yield back my time.
Thank you.
Good afternoon,
Good afternoon.
Commissioners. An interesting meeting today. As you all know, my thing is crime in this city. But when you come after the police, then I gotta have a say-so about it. The police have done a magnificent job for the city of Detroit. I have friends in Chicago. Matter of fact, I was born in Chicago. Every now and then I call to find out what them, I won't say what I want to say.
Thank
But
you.
anyway, what the police do in Chicago. They don't do nothing compared to Detroit. I'm telling you. I had the conversation. It was the mayor's office. I got their number, believe it or not. And I spoke with one of the officers that was answering the phone. And the information that he gave me was quite interesting. So I want to let you know, I'm going to continue to support our Detroit Police Department as long as I have breath in my body. And I happen to be 91 years old. And I think I'm doing a hell of a good job by advertising the protection that we have of our police department here. I don't know what environments that you've been under, but I know I raised 5 kids here, 5 children, and they're all doing wonderful. One is with the Ford Motor Company, one's executive with PNC. Then I have one that's with Ford for 34 years. So if I can do it with my children, and then one is retired from Cadillac. So I want all of you to know, and one's a postmaster, I'm sorry about her. But I want all of you to know realize that our department, police, is doing a hell of a job out here. They're risking their lives for us. And for you to come here and complain to the newspaper or anybody else about what they're doing, go to them and let them know what your feelings are. You don't have to broadcast it. We're doing a hell of a job here in the city of Detroit, and I want all of you to know it. I feel
Thank you.
that way.
That's your time.
It's all over.
Mm-hmm.
I think you doctoring that clock.
I gave you more time.
Doctoring that clock on me.
The next the next three speakers will be Mr. Brian Douglas and Miss Radia Butler.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to me today. I'm a lifelong resident of Detroit. I'm going to speak for District 5 because I don't really know my district because I move around. But right now I'm in Northwest Detroit. This is about Dr. Devon Hoover.
Microphone.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Is it good?
Yep, go right ahead.
He didn't need to be here. Devon could have been anywhere. With that brain, he could have went anywhere. He didn't have to stay here. He chose this city. He chose us. He loved this city. About him, like I said, to our mutual friends who are all gay in this community, we've known him for 20 plus years. He was the best of us. He was a fantastic man. He had a fantastic character. He did the best in this town. With that being said, he loved grandiose things. That house was grandiose. He loved the art of it. He loved the culture. He loved the history. That's all he cared about. He didn't care about anything else other than people, because that's why you become a doctor. And in this, I'm going to say, kindness was the beginning of his demeanor, and faith in God was the end of his understanding. We all understand that this is an ongoing active investigation, and its integrity must be intact for a court of law. With that being said, his family, they're heartbroken, they're destroyed. Ascension is heartbroken, it's destroyed a little bit. They lost a valuable member. Henry Ford is also hurting. Patients, thousands of patients that I've talked to, a few, 10 or 12, they're still distraught. This murderer is still walking around. I don't know how else to put that. This is serious. This seemed insidious. And on top of killing the man, you go on a character assassination through his funeral on a live feed, and then through internet channels to destroy him, his character as a man and how he walked in this city. We got to do better. Chief White already addressed half of what I had in this, so I'm going to stop talking now and give you back your time.
Thank you, and our condolences.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Commissioners, at the 2nd Precinct Police Community Relations Council meeting, November 14, 2023, Mr. Jeremiah Wheeler was our guest speaker. He is 26 years old. I chose his topic, Bridging the Gap. During his presentation, Mr. Wheeler stated that his heart skips a beat when he encounters police, and later I spoke with a former police officer, and he also expressed being uncomfortable coming in contact with the police. Commissioners, these expressed feelings, I believe, comes from the history of negative behaviors of policing, especially with black males. I also have negative feelings when I see two white officers together at night due to being traumatized as a child. I have a member in the community who has been traumatized from childhood and refuses to attend our monthly meetings because of having to be around police and guns. Commissioners, how many people have these same feelings? Our commanders and officers must be chosen carefully, especially those who do not live in the city and know the culture of the people who lives there. I don't know what can be done, because after having worked for many years and passed exams, they do deserve to be promoted. And the young officers, black or white, I believe feel they have power because they have badge and a gun. Please share these comments during your training sessions to help the officers change what we perceive of police officers. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
The next two speakers will be Ms. Shanita Williams and Ms. Carol Gore.
And can you call that name that was missing earlier?
Tabitha, and again, forgive me for the mispronouncing it.
Has
I'll just
Tab-
spell your last name. Nahabedian.
Is Tabitha return? Okay, no, come right ahead.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Okay, you all know I've been complaining about the Detroit police officers stalking me in their civilian vehicles. And I also made several complaints concerning my vehicle being broken into at MGM Casino. So I just found out recently that MGM, the security guards and Detroit police officers are involved in breaking into my car illegally, and I do have illegal listening devices in it. And that's not the kicker. Pardon me, and like I said, no disrespect. All officers are not bad officers. But when you take an oath and wear that badge, I expect you guys to respect it, period. So now, police officers that are at that casino, gambling, hacking into them devices, all type of stuff. They done hacked into my car. It's all type of stuff going on at MGM. Not just MGM. It's not just the Detroit police officers either. That's my problem. And it's going on 3 years. Deputy Chief said, we all have a great social media platform. I have a target on my back. I have to worry about the cuckoos coming at me. Then I have to worry about police officers not respecting their badge. And my life is in danger every day, and it's going on 3 years. Something needs to be done, because like I said, I'm trying to diffuse the situation, because I come here all the time discussing the same stuff over and over again. Something needs to be done. Somebody needs to do their job correctly. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ms. Carol Gore and Mr. Jeff Cowan.
Hello, it's
Hello.
Carol Gove. I'm here to speak about Dr. Devon Hoover. I am aware that there are serious problems with the investigation for what happened during the first 2 days. So I think it's going to be a real problem for the prosecutor's office. So I understand all of the delay. But given all of that, is there a reason the FBI has not been called into this, or what does it take to get the FBI into this case? And I'm not criticizing anybody. These things just happen, and we seem to be here. And I believe the snowfall thing, so I can't tell you how disappointing that was. And the family has not been communicated with. No one has been communicated with. So it's just very, very frustrating. And I just want to wrap this up with what was said before. You know, my personal loss is huge. He was my best friend. I know it looks weird. I'm 30 years older than he is, but he was my best friend. But the people that aren't going to have their brain tumors operated on, and the people that aren't going to walk again, this murderer killed them too.
Our condolences. DC Hayes, what's the process for FBI getting involved in cases? You can come right ahead, sir.
I would need to get back with you. There are certain triggers which they will adopt a case, so I can get you what those are. I'll get back to the board secretary.
Thank you. Go right ahead.
Good afternoon, honorable police commissioners. I just want to say how grateful I am for your service. I found out recently how little you're compensated monetarily for your investment of time and service to our community. I want to thank every single one of you for what you provide. And Mr. Chief, I appreciate the excellence of your department and Chief White.
Can you speak up, please?
Your excellent service to our community is appreciated every single day and every night. I'm a block club resident of 19 years, and the police department is nothing less than excellent. I'm here today just to help us continue that level of excellence in every department within the force. When Dr. Hoover was murdered, I became more aware that there is a police commission and of what you all do, and I started paying close attention because he was a neighbor, and learned that the neighbors were not canvassed in Boston Edison following the murder. And the other issue with the several weeks coming in after the murder was that when the victim's friends and neighbors were calling the homicide line, we couldn't get through and we couldn't get a return phone call. And I heard that from one of Dr. Hoover's closest friends, had the same experience. Months went by without a return phone call from the homicide department. So I just think that this department needs to be funded. You've heard defund the police. We need to fund any department that needs help. If the workload is such that we can't do all the things that we really want to do when they need to be done because we're just keeping up and working our butts off, then let's fund that department and let me know, let the public know. Thank you for your op-ed in the Free Press. Let the city know what's going on. Let us know what resources are needed. We'll back you up. And with this recent murder of Ms. Wall in Lafayette Park, again, I'm concerned where the neighbors canvassed. Cameras are everywhere these days, and the memory on them, you might have 30 days worth of footage if you're lucky. I checked in with a friend who, and I've got the
I'm
writing.
sorry, sir, that's your time. Thank you.
He walked past police and left the country same day as the murder. I don't know if he was.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, may I just ask one question of the chief? Deputy Chief Hayes, can you respond to his question, please, regarding the fact that nobody would pick up the phone and talk to people who had, I guess, tips or whatever about this killing, or how does that work? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Through the chair, anytime there's, someone would like to come forth with information, 3 ways: certainly calling the investigative entity. In this case, it's Detroit Police Homicide, certainly Crime Stoppers, and also Rewards TV. I'm not sure, and to that point, certainly condolences go out to the loss of your dear friend or loved one. Sometimes when calls come in, and I know a lot of people are concerned and want to ask questions in addition to tips and see where the investigation is going, but there is one single source of contact, oftentimes with families. So a person may call and say, hey, my friend was a victim of such and such crime. Those that they may come in contact with, if they are not that family member or that point of contact, we're unable to release that information to them and give them that update that they would like. So I can't speak to the specifics of this, of the interactions or the phone calls, or whether the information was either trying to be either relayed or ascertained, but that is the processes in which we would disseminate information.
Thank you. Next speaker.
The next speaker is Cheryl Minifield. Cheryl Minifield. Mr. Ronald Foster, Johnson, and then we'll go into Zoom.
Good evening.
Hello.
Just want to come down and just say a few things today. First thing is that we are coming upon an election year. Law enforcement is not to protect administration, okay? It's to protect the community, and I think that's important that you all know and exhibit integrity. It's very important. The Reuben Hurricane Carter case, in his ruling, the federal judge ruled that convictions that appeal to racism rather than reason and concealment rather than disclosure is more harmful than the accused accusations of them themselves. And so I do want to encourage you all that free speech is a law, and you have a duty and obligation to protect free speech. Our community has suffered for over 20, 30 years with the Strawberry case, with White Boy Rick, and as consequences to speaking out. And until you guys change that culture, it's going to be hard for you to go around and say, stop snitching. We need you all to take accountability here. I don't care if it's an elected official or administrative official. Do your job and enforce the laws appropriately. there's a new law, a duty to intervene. Officers have a duty to intervene, whether it's a federal law, whether it's a state law, whether it's an ordinance or anything else, you have a duty to protect all laws at all costs that you come across, even if it comes from your corporate counsel. As far as free speech, I did want to just say elected officials have a duty and obligation to represent their constituents regardless of anything, and that there is a debate clause to protect them, and to avoid anything else, I suggest that you guys assign a board spokesman and do not infringe upon nobody's First Amendment rights.
Next is Johnson, and then Mr. Darrell Ford.
Is it Mr. Johnson, you say?
It didn't say Mr. or Miss. It didn't say Johnson.
Johnson. Welcome, Ms. Johnson.
Good evening,
Your full name again, please.
Ms. Johnson.
Okay.
I've been here, as many of the other speakers have before.
Microphone.
I'm right into the microphone. Can you hear me? Okay. I have the same 3 questions. How is a felony arrest record and subsequent felony bench warrant generated from the 3rd Precinct in 2015 issued without any evidence of support? We heard from Chief White tonight about best practices. How is a felony bench warrant withheld for over 3 years without process serving to the person? And 3, how and why are records of action for a crime that was never committed not destroyed despite a judicial order and decree for destruction of records? I will continue to ask these questions until they are answered. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll put Detroiters up against anybody expressing their opinion. I just want to say happy holidays to everybody. And I'll just say that. And I want to just say the greatest gift that you can give anybody, your relatives coming into the city, the greatest gift that you can give them is please tell them to count 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 before they enter a green light, because people are driving pretty reckless out here. And I just want to say this, the other thing I just want to say, this right here, it's spreading. You saw what happened in Grosse Pointe. If you didn't, get on the internet. It's a terrible thing happened in Grosse Pointe about red lights. And then and drag racing. The other thing I want to say is I echo this lady right here, and I say this right here. Please, take your hat off and say, police, you're doing a good job sometime. Holler out the window, congratulate them, shake their hand, do something to them. Because, you know, they have mama drama, they have baby mama, they have daddy drama, and they have some very interesting relatives that they have to deal with too, and you know that. So give the police a handshake or something, help them, because they need some help. I'll say this again, they are looking out for you, and that's the first person you're gonna call is the police. The other thing is this, I'll be going back to Florida, I'll be going for 6 months, you probably gonna see me, you might see me 1 or 2 times, but when I come back, I hope I have something good to say to you. But again, tell the police they're doing a good job. It may help you, and make them appreciate you and do a better job. God bless you.
Thank you, and safe travels to you.
Mr. Chair, we're going into Zoom now. Your next speakers will be former Commissioner William Davis, Mr. Reuben Crowley, and CAC member Scotty Bowman.
Okay. Former Commissioner Davis?
Hello, can I be heard?
Yes, you can. Go right ahead.
Okay, I'd like to start off by saying I think it is imperative that everyone knows that the city of Detroit, the Board of Police Commissioners, and the police department need to have greater transparency, because that has and continues to be a problem. Because I know a number of groups have filed freedom of information requests, and they get a big runaround, and they ask to get paid a large fees for information that should be readily available, especially if you can transmit it via email to those individuals or those organizations. So there is a problem that, you know, that y'all may be hiding and y'all may not be sticking, y'all may be sticking your head in the sand, but that is a problem. Also, I think you need to make sure you let the new people know that, you know, sometimes part of the problem has been the board leadership. You know, the board, you know, I'm pleased to see so many new people coming on the board, and hopefully whenever there is an election, the person elected to be the new vice chair won't be also an appointee. You know, I think it's horrible that you could have two appointees, you know, running this board, especially in that the appointees are only liable and only look to serve the mayor. You know, hopefully everyone there should be there to serve the community, because we need our numbers to go down for homicides. We need our numbers to go down for break-ins. We need our numbers to go down for a number of things. And there are a lot of good officers, but we want to make sure that you weed out the bad officers. And you can't do that with your head in the sand. Thank you.
Thank you. Was that Ruben Crowley who's next?
Yes, to the citizens, taxpayers, residents, City of Detroit. Newsflash. Today, during the debriefing with the mother of Kenesha Coleman, DPD case 20-11112, the Michigan State Police, MSP, acknowledged that there is not enough evidence to place the tag of suicide, the classification, designation, and label of suicide on Kenesha Coleman's death. They so much acknowledged that in a debrief. Now, in the same breath, I want to give a public service announcement. I want to personally commend DPD Chief James E. White. When presented with additional evidence that was not in the homicide file, he picked up the phone and called in the Michigan State Police. He did what was needed to be done, and you can't ask anything other or anything more of the man than what was needed to be done. I want to commend him on his leadership and being a stand-up guy. Now, I would also like to bring to the attention of citizens, taxpayers, residents here in the city of Detroit, and especially Willie Bell and Dr. Reverend Bishop, Dr. Reverend Snake Oil Salesman Jim Holly. Your actions that you took to stand in the way of what needed to be done have been duly noted. Now, to all the police officers, those that wear the badge honorably, I commend you for putting that badge on, leaving your residence and coming out to protect and serve the citizens of the city of Detroit. And that's for everybody that wears that badge. Deputy Chief Hayes, I would like to thank you and appreciate you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, your last speaker is DC4 CAC member Scotty Bowman.
Mr. Bowman?
Hello.
Go right ahead.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to say that civilian oversight and accountability are not about loving or hating the police. It's about individuals doing something improper and being held accountable for doing something improper, even though they are police who often get a pass because, we expect so much of them and we think highly of them. But in general, it's a matter of just individuals who are officers in the police department being held accountable for proper or improper behavior as police officers. It isn't about painting with a broad brush and liking or disliking people with that occupation. Secondly, the issue of license plate readers. There's been an expansion of license plate readers in the city of Detroit. A whole bunch of them have become available due to some grants. And I'm very concerned that people's privacy is not going to be adequately protected. I understand there's some pretty strict standards as far as what information the police use that the license plate readers bring in. However, they are still bringing in that information, and that information is going someplace other than the camera that's reading the plate before a decision is made whether or not to use the information. And to me, that's still a problem. If you want to flag certain license plate numbers, then that information needs to go out to the device itself so that it will only transmit from that device to the network information about that vehicle if that vehicle is seen. Anything else still lends itself to the possibility of abuse and overall tracking of individuals. And then we have development of artificial intelligence that can take that over and make use of it.
Thank you. And thank everyone for their public comment. At this time, we'll move on to the report from Board Secretary Victoria Shaw, as well as communications. Secretary Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through the chair, commissioners, your incoming correspondence are outlined in your agenda, and I'll touch on several items here. As a reminder, effective December 1st, staff will no longer send BOPC-related information to personal email addresses for the board. So if your city email address is not active and or you are having trouble accessing it, please reach out to Mr. Robert Brown for assistance. This matter was brought to the staff's attention by Attorney LaBelle in regards to city policies. And so, again, if you are having difficulty accessing or activating your city email address, please reach out to the office. The administrative leave without pay considerations for Police Officer John Talbert and Police Officer Daryl Partlow have been rescheduled to next week, December 7th, due to scheduling conflicts with required DPD personnel. Partial administrative leave without pay packets were emailed to commissioners on Tuesday this week for your preliminary review. Staff is waiting on responses from DPD to the questions posed to get further clarification on the matters. If the Disciplinary Administrative Request Committee would like to meet on these requests prior to the full board hearings, please let the office know at least 2 days in advance of the desired meeting date. Mr. Chair, for the next item in the Secretary report, some security concerns at the Merrill Plaisance building have been raised by Chief Investigator. And if you don't mind, I'd like to allow him to speak for this part of the report.
No problem.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Merrill Plaisance building needs to be open and accessible to the public to make the filing of citizen complaints and inviting and a supportive process for those who are filing citizen complaints for the Detroit residents and our guests. At the same time, the building needs to be secure, as this building is secure, and staff needs to be confident that appropriate protocols are in place for guest admissions to the building and steps taken in case escalated situations arise. If the board has no concerns, I would like to work directly with the DPD members in that building, at Merrill Plaisance building, to strengthen the security equipment and the protocols for the safety of the staff and our public guests.
Thank you. Is there any, Commissioner Bernard?
What are you suggesting specifically? Yes.
Through the chair, what I'm suggesting specifically is that we work very directly with the DPD staff there in the building to establish security protocols for screening those individuals who are coming into the building, and we have a plan of support for any escalations that might occur as a result of interfacing with citizens and guests.
Well, everyone in the building just about carries a weapon. They're all sworn, many of them are sworn officers, and many of our staff do so as well.
Through the chair.
I don't think that should preclude us from looking into policies that ensures that Nobody has to use their firearm in the
But
building.
We have a metal detector at the door.
Through,
Chief investigator?
through the chair, there needs to be significant security implemented at the building.
Vice Chair Holly.
Mr. Chairman, can you guys submit to us what the plan you like to have?
I think they were like asking us permission that he can do it,
Yeah.
and then he'll come to us with a plan.
That's what I'm
I think
saying.
that's-
It's-
So I don't think there's any objection for you to move forward in coming up with a plan on how we can better secure the building.
Thank you.
Thank you. Secretary Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Moving on to the 2022 annual report. Also included in your packets behind tab number 6 is the final draft of the 2022 annual report. I would like to recognize Ms. Teresa Blossom for her extensive work also on this project. The analysis of the data was particularly challenging due to recent changes, albeit improvements in reporting and dashboards of citizen complaint data, as well as additional shifts in data reporting from DPD. Either way, the report is comprehensive, is well-designed, and the staff is seeking the board's approval for the draft that you have in front of you today. Mr. Chair, would you like me to pause my report for the board to entertain this item?
The chair entertains a motion to approve the final draft of the Board of Police Commissioners 2022 annual report.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been properly moved and second. Is there any discussion? Hearing no
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Bell?
we just received it.
Okay.
So why we don't approve something, we just received it? And I haven't had a chance to look at it. So we just received it, just leave it at that.
Okay, well,
Draft, just a draft.
it has already been moved and seconded. Is there the desire of,
Through-
who moved? Was it Commissioner Moore?
Me.
Commissioner Bernard, is there a desire for you to repeal?
We're reviewing it, right now. I mean, it's not, it's an annual report. It just says what we did in 2022. It's not anything new. It shouldn't be new to the board.
Secretary Shaw.
Through the chair, just to clarify for the board, this is the third or fourth draft that's been passed to the board. And so over the last several months, the board has had a chance to review the iterations, and there have not been very many changes since the last draft that was submitted a couple weeks ago. However, if it pleasures the board to wait for a vote, that's up to the decision of the board. I just want to clarify that the drafts have been issued over the last several months.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the final draft of the Board of Police Commissioners 2023 annual report, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those who oppose say no. The ayes have it. The draft, I guess the Board of Police Commissioners 2022 annual report has been approved.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I want to congratulate the staff on what appears to be a first-class report. Great graphics, great pictures, great everything. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, and thank you to the staff. Secretary Shaw, your report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For staffing updates for open positions, investigators, per the board's last vote on the 17th of November, contingent offers are out to 8 investigator candidates for the salary of $54,500 and a tentative start date of December 4th. The position is also being reposted to fill additional open positions for investigators. And for the executive assistant 2, 76 applicants were received and are being reviewed by myself and the acting attorney and will be shared with all commissioners. Recommendations will go to the Personnel and Training Committee first. The last item on my report today is in regards to the Civilian Oversight Analyst Determination Memo dated 11/16, which is in your packets as well. As the board is aware, the staff has been working with HR class compensation to review all salaries for BOPC and OCI staff. Class Comp is conducting analysis and making recommendations on changes in job descriptions, salary ranges, and/or current compensation. Those recommendations are brought before the board before any implementation for the board's approval. The board has been asking to, or the board has been seeking to staff an analyst for some time. As class compensation conducted its research, the board agreed to recruit for a temporary analyst in the meantime, and those negotiations with that candidate continue. For BOPC's permanent analyst position, Class Comp is recommending creating a new job classification to meet the needs of the board. Class Comp's memo is included in your packet behind tab number 6, and I'll read that memo for the benefit of the board and the community. A class compensation request form was submitted to create a new title for the Board of Police Commissioners that resembled the duties and responsibilities of a data analyst. The following memo contains a proposed recommendation after a review was completed by the Class Comp Department. After receiving the request to create a new title, Classification and Compensation looked internally for similar roles already created within the city to serve as a direct comparable. Aligning the newly created job specification to that of a data analyst, we were able to find a large number of similarities between the two roles. Unable to create a subclass, we extracted the information within the job specification that was applicable to what this role will be responsible for within the Board of Police Commissioners and created the new job specification. With this information in mind, we established the new range for this role at $60,553 to $84,836, aligning it to the data analyst role. It is a recommendation of the Classification and Compensation Department that the new title named Civilian Oversight Analyst, Board of Police Commissioners, utilize the range mentioned above. Upon approval from the board, the Classification and Compensation Department will schedule this role to be reviewed by City Council for approval. I would like to just clarify for the board that this is not an additional role. This is the analyst position that the board has been working for all year, and this is just another step in the process to establish this as a permanent role for the board's support. Mr. Chair, if you would like, I can entertain any questions that the commissioners may have on this matter.
Are there any questions for Secretary Shaw? Vice Chair Holly.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. And just a concern, I looking through all of this, Mr. Chairman, and we brag about Ms. Balsam and the staff, but bragging about them and paying them is two different things. And it seems like to me that we got people coming in here at a high rate, and I have no problem with it. But people have been with us for 17, 18, 19 years, and we are basically are basically not giving them the number that I think they should have. I would be humiliated if I've been here this long and see somebody coming in 10,000 over me, and I've been here for a number of years, making 50. So I'm just saying to you again, just an observation, and I'd like really to put it on the conscience of the board and the staff to look out for people like you just brag about Ms. Blossom, which she does a good job, Mr. Brown and Ms. Underwood. I think we ought to be concerned about their salaries too.
Point well taken, and our fiscal manager is on that as well. And so these are dual tracks. We're doing a comp analysis on all of our staff to make sure that we bring them up to market rate, but at the same time want to make sure we don't delay this position as well. Any further questions for Secretary Shaw? Hearing no questions, the chair would entertain a motion to approve City HR Class Comp to submit the request to City Council for a new job classification of Civilian Oversight Analyst, Board of Police Commissioners, with the salary range of $60,553 to $84,836.
So moved.
So, second.
Been
yeah.
properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. That motion passes. So, Secretary Shaw, are you conclude with your report?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That concludes the Secretary report. Would you like me to give announcements?
Yes, please go right ahead.
Thank you. The next Board of Police Commissioners meeting is Thursday, December 7th at 3 p.m. here at Detroit Public Safety Headquarters. And the next community meeting is Thursday, December 14th at 6:30 p.m. The 3rd Precinct is hosting at Considine Recreation Center in the auditorium, 8904 Woodward Avenue in Detroit. The list of monthly committee meetings for November are listed in the agenda. All of those have occurred, so there are no other committee meetings scheduled for the remainder of November at this time. If any get scheduled, then a notification will go out to the public.
Thank you. And now we will move on to new business, where we will begin with a...
New business right here, Mr. Chair.
I am on the agenda, Commissioner Banks, and so we'll begin with A, which is a committee report from the Personnel and Training Committee.
Mr. Chairman, because by this time my speech is kind of, can I have the secretary report?
That's fine. Secretary Shaw will be reading the Personnel and Training Committee report on behalf of Chair Holly, the chair of the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The memorandum in your packets is from Reverend Jim Holly, Chairperson of the Personnel and Training Committee, dated November 21st. Dear colleagues, on behalf of the Board of Police Commissioners, Personnel and Training Committee, please see the key updates from the committee held on November 21st. Board attendees were Committee Chairperson Jim Holly and Commissioner Lisa Carter. For the first item, consideration of contingent appointment and salary for Akari Jenkins to the position of Administrative Special Services Staff Exempt Analyst. The Personnel and Training Committee discussed the originally recommended salary offer, the counter offer, and the market analysis provided by Class Comp. The committee approved the recommendation to the full board to revise Akari Jenkins' salary offer from $58,600 to $72,694. The next item, consideration to appoint Mary Barber to this position of Administrative Special Services Staff Exempt 2 Analyst. Since the committee's recommendation is to continue to pursue the offer with the other candidate, this agenda item was not entertained. Lastly, the investigator interviews. 6 investigator candidates were invited to interview on November 21st. Only one candidate arrived and was interviewed, Marcellus Ball. The interview lasted approximately 30 minutes and consisted of the following elements: introductions, instructions, an overview of position, interview questions, and writing sample, as well as candidate questions and next steps. After the interview, the committee compiled scores and agreed on the following next steps. Pending commissioner and HR availability, schedule an additional committee meeting for the week of November 27th to interview additional candidates from the current candidate pool. To clarify, schedules did not align, and so that additional meeting for interviews did not occur. And then also request the HR repost the investigator position to recruit for remaining open positions, and that request has been submitted. At this time, Personnel and Training Committee does not have another meeting scheduled. Sincerely, Reverend Jim Holly.
Thank you. Is there any action out of the committee? Chair Holly?
Please.
I kind of would need you to read the motion if that's what you're talking about. So I'll do it this way. The chair entertains a motion by direction of the Personnel and Training Committee to amend the appointment offer for Akari Jenkins for the position of Administrative Special Services Staff Exempt 2 Analyst from $58,600 to $72,694 as a final offer pending background checks. This doesn't require a second because it comes out of committee, but is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and that motion passes. Is there anything else from the Personnel and Training Committee?
That's nothing else.
All right, with none, we will now move on in new business. I'm giving to you to the Policy Committee report.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, okay. So now we have the Policy Committee, and we'll turn it over to the Chair of the Policy Committee, Commissioner Linda Bernard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Policy Committee met, myself and Commissioner Ricardo Moore on November 21st. What am I thinking of? November 21st, 2023. The first item that we discussed was the outlier media request regarding the issue of what's happening with tenants and the police department and those sorts of issues. We could not really discuss it because the request that we received from Outlier Media regarding squatters and the Squatters Action Team, we don't have the responses to their questions. Their questions were, and we've referred them to the Board of Police Commissioners, the results of the investigation into the Squatters Action Team, that was number one. Number two was revised protocols and policies mentioned in the memo that I guess came from the police department. Three, information about how, if and how the Squatters Action Team has been reorganized. And four, any other information related to the Squatters Action Team. They had
Commissioner
requested.
Bernard, just for a point of clarification, you said that you referred those questions to the Board of Police
Yes,
Commissioners.
yes,
Did
we
you
did.
mean you referred them to the Detroit Police Department?
Police Department,
Okay,
I
thank you.
apologize, right.
Go right ahead.
Okay, so, yeah, we have not received a response yet to those questions so that we can obviously respond back to Outliers Media. But hopefully, we'll get a response before the next meeting. The second thing that we addressed were one, two, three, four policies of the city of Detroit. We had on the agenda the facial recognition policy, but the chief sent a memo asking that we defer on that policy currently and to allow DPD to make additional amendments to it. So it didn't make sense for us to address it if in fact we were going to get amendments in the future, so we pulled that off of the agenda. The second thing that we discussed was the eyewitness identification and lineup special order. We reviewed that policy in depth. We've had, obviously, discussions with the department on it, and I am prepared today to recommend to the board that we adopt the policy as written and as revised with the consent and approval of the department.
Through the chair.
Secretary Shaw?
Just to clarify, through the chair, Commissioner Bernard, at this time, I think you're referring to the eyewitness identification and lineup, which is next on the committee's list to review. The committee wasn't ready to make a recommendation on that just yet.
Okay, all right, I apologize for that. Okey-doke. The third item that we discussed was the draft video release ordinance, which we spent a considerable amount of time on. And Attorney Peter Rhodes, who's here as policy analyst and so forth for Councilwoman Angela Callaway, also assisted in that meeting and was very responsive, quite frankly. We have finalized a draft of that policy/ordinance, which we are prepared to refer to City Council. We elected to prepare this as an ordinance and not as a policy because that's what the other cities have done. It's not a matter of internal policy, it's a matter of city law, if you will, as an ordinance. And that policy, that ordinance has been prepared. And I'll let my colleagues speak to the changes that we made to the initial referral.
Commissioner Moore?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The main thing that we changed was the timeline. Initially, it was 60 days, and then I started thinking about the San Juan incident with Hakeem Littleton. The department released that video in less than 2 hours because it was to the department's favor to release it quickly to stop any disruption of city and the city services. So I started analyzing 21 days would be fair to come down from 60 in the interest of public confidence in the police department.
So
Bernard?
our policy requires that videos be released within 21 days. There are certain exceptions to that, of course, if the Department of Justice is involved or those sorts of issues, then of course the video couldn't be released if in fact there's a supervening federal power that is involved with the ordinance. So that was the major change we made from the original. I don't know if Secretary Shaw wants to read the ordinance into the record, the proposed ordinance, if you would do that, please.
Through the chair. Just to clarify, Commissioner Bernard, your request is to read the entire ordinance at this time into the record?
Let's just read the amendments.
Oh, I know it's not that long, though. It's really pretty brief, actually, compared, for most ordinances.
What parts have been changed?
Well, just to clarify, this is a draft of a brand-new ordinance, so the whole thing is new. And it has been posted to the website. It was read during the committee meeting as well.
Was.
Would it be more appropriate to just read off some highlights, or do you want the whole thing read?
Highlights.
Yeah.
Tell my
Vice
colleagues.
Chair Holly?
Highlights.
My concern is, Mr. Chairman, that we ought to have this in word, written in, as it's supposed to be in the record.
Yeah, you have it in.
But I'm concerned, I got 7 people not here. I mean, this ought to be something that the whole board ought to be very much involved in. The other thing I'm concerned about, that we're giving the city council the role that we have, we're giving it to another entity of the city. I just feel like we need to have some, I appreciate the meeting, the work that they're doing, but I'd like to have some time to talk about this and have other committee people, board members involved in this. I just feel like it's not fair to the others. I know if I wasn't here, I would feel unfair about it. But I think it ought to be basically where we can see it, not just before you read it into the record. Because once it's in the record, it's in the record.
Well, it is in your packet after tab 9 in writing as a policy, and I do appreciate the fact that we would want a full attendance at the meeting, but you know how difficult that can be, and so we're in the catch-22 because we don't want to delay the policy because then the citizens won't get the video. So we do have to operate as it relates to our quorum, but if it is the desire of this board to postpone this, you know, that it, again, is your will. But this is a recommendation that has come out of the policy committee, and so it's our duty to respond. Commissioner Bell.
Mr. Chairman, my understanding by the city charter and our goals and objectives, that is the board, DPD, and the mayor involved in policy making. Has that taken place? Is DPD and the mayor and the board? It's not a one-headed effort.
I disagree with that.
I'm looking at, correctly, if to look at the city charter.
I assume if it goes to city, go ahead.
Just excuse me, Commissioner Bernard, through the chair. This is a recommendation from the board to go to city council for an ordinance. City council passes ordinances. It's
Correct.
not a policy. What you're referring to, Commissioner Bell, is a policy created by the three-headed monster known as the chief, the mayor, and the board.
Well, this is
different.
This is something different. This is rather unique, as Commissioner Vice Chair indicated. So the full board should have the opportunity to weigh in on, because you already released a public statement on this. It's out there. But we haven't had a chance to have discussion in terms of sitting on this board.
It's just this draft policy that it has been released. And again, as the policy committee has done this work, they are borrowing from best practices from other municipalities. And what has been seen is that when it has been made an ordinance relative to a policy, that it provides more teeth to ensure that it's followed. And I don't think that there should be much challenge in working collaboratively with our other legislative body to ensure, again, that this work is being done. It's not the only time we go to city council for assistance, and I think that this might be a beneficial one. Now, if, again, you're uncomfortable with that, you know, your vote can be no or to
Mr.
abstain.
Chairman, I would say you're working with other entities, but you haven't even worked with this board in reference to this particular matter.
Pardon me?
Who haven't?
We haven't, the policy committee haven't worked with the board in reference to this matter.
This is what they're doing
Of course
now.
we did. And this meeting.
They had
was-
it,
was
sorry,
noti-
let me speak. They had a committee meeting. This is how our structure is set up. They deliberated the work in the committee meeting, and now they're bringing what they did in the committee meeting to this board.
After the fact.
I mean, that's kind of how it works. I mean, we were clear on, hold on, I'm speaking. We were clear on the agenda items on their committee, that was shared. We were aware that these were policies that they were going to review. They've done their part, and they're brought it here. And if you're saying now that it's here that you don't like it, or it needs to go back, or we can do something different, then that's your right. But it's not them usurping the board's agency in this regard, and they had no control over who was going to be absent and present. This is our standing meeting. There is an expectation that you're here, and so I don't think that it's reasonable to utilize that as a reason as to not move forward.
Correct.
So with that, the chair, by direction of the policy committee, the chair by the policy committee entertains a motion to adopt the draft video release policy for the city council. Let me read that again. The chair entertains a motion by direction of the policy committee that we move to adopt the draft video release policy for the city of Detroit -V4.
As an ordinance.
Yes, it doesn't require a second. And so is there any discussion?
Does it require 3/4 of, does it?
No.
No.
No. Simple
Nope, it's just
majority.
simple majority. And so no further discussion. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, no.
No.
The chair calls for a roll call vote.
Mr. Chair, for roll call vote, Chair Quantes Presley,
Yes.
Vice Chair Jim Holly,
Absolutely no.
Commissioner Tamara Liberty Smith,
No.
Commissioner Linda Bernard,
Yes.
Commissioner Cedric Banks,
Yes.
Commissioner Willie Bell,
No.
Commissioner Ricardo Moore.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, you have 4 yes votes and 3 no votes.
With 4 yes votes and 3 no votes, that motion passes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Go right ahead with your report.
The final item, where's my notes here? On this agenda,
Where's the final item?
well, almost, yeah, it is.
This is through the chair.
It is 2 items that we have.
Well, it's 3 through the chair. The second piece to the ordinance is the resolution to go along with the ordinance.
Okay, so we still have business to handle in this regard, and so you might make your motion, Commissioner Bernard.
To approve the resolution as drafted in support of the, of our proposed policy/ordinance regarding video releases by the police department to the community.
Mr. Chair, for the record, the resolution, if adopted by the board, should be read into the record.
Okay.
Okay.
So there's been a motion. It does not need any second. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Oh, hold on, let me get a point of clarification. Were you saying that that needs to be read before we vote, or once it's adopted, it needs to be read?
Yes, Mr. Chair, it should be read before voting.
Okay, well, go ahead and read the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to read the resolution from the Policy Committee, Board of Police Commissioners, resolution for City Council's adoption of the video release ordinance as drafted by the Board of Police Commissioners. Whereas the City of Detroit paved the way for civilian oversight of law enforcement for the United States of America with the establishment of the Detroit Board of Police Commissioners in 1974, and must continue to strive to be the benchmark and example of transparency and accountability. And whereas other cities such as Detroit's sister city of Chicago have progressively adopted policies and ordinances mandating the timely release of videos and supporting documentation related to police use of force incidents. And whereas the Detroit Board of Police Commissioners, the Detroit City Council, and the public have repeatedly experienced selective, delayed, and redacted fulfillment of video footage from the Detroit Police Department. Currently, video is released within the Detroit Police Department's discretion. And whereas public safety is dependent upon the establishment and maintenance of transparency with respect to the operations of the Detroit Police Department and trust and communication between the police department and the community whom it serves. And whereas the people of Detroit have an undeniable and in some cases paramount interest in being informed in a timely fashion and based on the most accurate information possible about how their police department conducts its business, especially when the use of force by the police results in the death of or great bodily harm to a civilian. And whereas when police interactions tragically end in the serious injury or death of a civilian and or Detroit Police Department member, There's heightened public desire for transparency into what occurred.
Let the record show that we have lost our quorum. And without a quorum, we cannot move forward with the business of this agenda. So the chair entertains adjournment. This meeting is adjourned.